3 minutes of epic ownage. Look, I have my criticisms for Candace Owens. I do. But, I got to say, Rabbi Shmuley got a firm smack to the mouth. And it was pure gold. Pure gold. Pure gold. It was delicious and nutritious. Nutritious and delicious. It was a mic drop moment. So, look, I think we got to really talk about this. And obviously, look, folks, no matter what happens, no matter who gets elected into office, Israel's, to quote Bassem Youssef, Israel's going to get away with this. And it's terrible. But I did enjoy these 3 minutes because there's no denying what's happening in Israel, in the West Bank, in Gaza. There's no denying it. Again, I can't help but bring up that quote way early on that Charlie Kirk brought up because he's, to his own accountability, he said, hey, look, I've been to Israel a few times. Big walls, watchtowers, cameras everywhere, air surveillance, all of that jazz. How do you not see that haymaker coming? Which, oh, by the way, the New York Times actually did an article, and we covered it way early on this year, that the intelligence services were given that heads up, something's going to happen. And they did nothing, which, by the way, just want to remind all of you, before October 7th, good old Netanyahu had a lot of problems. Looks like he needed a wag the dog kind of moment.
Actually, one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said. And trying to screen that as a defense of Black people. The Black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America. They won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing and what we've always recognized is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's Black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing. And you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it that becomes important to understand? What did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky. And their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus, we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species. So that is a belief. And you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated, and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel. What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
Well, that was a smack to the face of Shmuley. Look, and look, here's the thing. I mean, one thing we've learned from all these debates from Piers Morgan's show, do you condemn hummus? Do you condemn hummus? But we have to talk about what's going on there, though, because the reason why I put up that segment was because no matter what happens, folks, this war is still going to be ongoing. Did Candace Owens give a 3-minute beatdown to Shmuley? Yes. Will it change the way things are happening right now? No. Because no matter what happens, the war is still ongoing.
Today, mass protests continued in Israel 5 days after its military discovered the bodies of 6 hostages who were captured by Hamas on October 7th. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets, demanding that Prime Minister Netanyahu secure a ceasefire deal and free the remaining hostages. But those efforts have stalled in recent days, and many publicly attribute that to a series of 11th-hour demands by Netanyahu himself. Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, published an editorial about the loss of the hostages last weekend, reading, "It was Hamas terrorists who pulled the trigger, but it was Netanyahu who sealed their fate." Another Israeli paper published documents outlining Netanyahu's changing demands, which reportedly prevented a deal back in July, one that would have likely saved at least 3 of the 6 hostages who were later found dead in Gaza.
Look, I hate to break this to you because I know Shmuley's brought it up a lot. We got to save the hostages. Listen. Maybe the best way to save those hostages wasn't to blow up all of Gaza. Which, by the way, it's not like 70 or 80. All of Gaza has been turned into a moonscape. You got men, women, children starving. You got them being exposed to deadly viruses and diseases. And they're getting shot at, popped at, blown up, ran over, all that stuff. All that jazz. No cookies for Gaza. Right, Destiny? And by the way, those hostages, I don't know if any of them are still alive. I hope they're okay. I want the shooting to stop, but I don't think that's on Netanyahu's to-do list.
Last week, Netanyahu has denied that reporting, along with accusations that he is trying to perpetuate the war in Gaza, which so far has killed over 40,000 people, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Joining me now is Ben Rhodes, former Deputy National Security Advisor in the Obama administration, and of course, co-host of Pod Save the World. Ben,
that's a stupid name. Pod Save the World. No.
Thank you for being here. I know you guys have been talking about this on your excellent podcast, and I'm eager to get your thoughts about whether this is just an unvarnished attempt on the part of Netanyahu to basically run out the clock until November when, I suppose in his hopes, Trump wins and any potential deal would require far less concessions on the part of Netanyahu.
Yeah, there's not a lot of mystery to this, Alex. And what's interesting is there's a lot more public discussion of it in Israel, in the media and on the streets than even here in the United States. It's been clear for a long time that Netanyahu's political survival is kind of tied to the perpetuation of the war. He avoided accountability for the failures of October 7th. He kind of tried to divide his opposition, as he's always done. And he's consistently moved the goalposts in these ceasefire negotiations. I mean, there was a kind of an absurdity, Alex, in the spring to Joe Biden, the president of the United States, going out and presenting what he called an Israeli proposal that Israel's negotiators had talked about with American mediators, but that Prime Minister Netanyahu himself could never embrace. And every report that we've gotten since then has been that, yes, obviously, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, he has maximalist demands. He wants the ceasefire to be an end to the war. But Netanyahu is introducing all kinds of new things that he knows are going to scuttle these talks, about Israeli control over certain border crossings into Gaza, about the lack of movement for the people of Gaza to return to their homes. Again, he seems to want to kind of run out this clock. And we also know that that's very much in line with what Donald Trump wants. He does.
First of all, yeah, hey, look, my audience, sometimes you guys go too far. I don't know where you learn to talk like this. Definitely not from me. Dabby Dabs wrote, she meant on your shitey little podcast that nobody watches. Oh, stop being mean. Why is my audience mean? Where'd you learn this from? Who killed Hannibal?
Doesn't want there to be the appearance of any kind of progress in Gaza. He likes the fact that there's chaos out there. And so sometimes the most obvious answer is what we're looking at. And that's why hundreds of thousands of Israelis are on the streets.
I do marvel, Ben, at the sort of Lucy with the football nature of all of this. Like over and over again, the U.S. keeps kicking, and pardon the crudeness of this metaphor, but the U.S. keeps kicking and Lucy being Netanyahu, keeps moving the football.
That's a horrible analogy, but at the same time, too, it fits, you know. But the thing is, the only difference is, you know, in that Charlie Brown skit where Lucy holds the football and Charlie Brown thinks he's going to hit it, the only difference is now is that Lucy's holding the football and Charlie Brown's taking a dump. He ain't kicking the football. Ain't nobody doing it. Snoopy's there, still dreaming that he's the Red Baron and all that other stuff. But no. That's not going to happen. Nobody's kicking the football because no one wants to do anything. Simple as that, okay? There you go. Just throwing it out there.
Football, right? I mean, I was struck by this passage in the New York Times. U.S. officials say they expect to complete what they termed a final proposal with Egyptian and Qatari negotiators on Wednesday or Thursday. But a senior American official acknowledged that previous plans had also been called final, but were then revised. I mean, how should the administration be talking about what is happening right now in terms of these negotiations?
So, first of all, there's nothing surprising about the Lucy.
By the way, Lucy always lies about not pulling the football anyways. You know, as I get older, I actually root for Lucy because, you know, she's got that entrepreneurial business. Like, you know, she's a therapist and she holds the football, and Charlie Brown's still dumb enough to fall for all her tricks. Like, it's hilarious to me, man. There you go. Just throwing it out there. Watch, this guy's going to talk about Lucy and the football.
The football, look, Alex, back when I was in.
Okay, so watch. Hey, hold on. Bring it up again. Bring it up again with Lucy and the football. By the way, I hope the producers are yelling in her ear.
Wednesday or Thursday. But a senior American official acknowledged that previous plans had also been called final, but were then revised. I mean, how should the administration be talking about what is happening right now in terms of these negotiations?
So, first of all, there's nothing surprising about the Lucy with the football. Look, Alex, back when I was in the White House, Netanyahu did this all the time. Whenever we had negotiations around Palestinian issues, his own negotiators would, for hours, dozens of hours, hammer out agreements that then Netanyahu would come in and just not abide by. And then,
what is with all these people in Washington, D.C., you know, doing a podcast now? Pod save the world. By the way, he's part of the Obama administration. So what does that tell you about him, huh?
Talks would collapse and he'd try to blame the Palestinians. That was basically his approach to every negotiation with the Palestinians or involving this issue during his entire career in politics. And I think what's frustrating to many of us about the administration is, number one, they don't call this out. I mean, they don't, on background, we see senior administration officials kind of complaining, but you don't hear Joe Biden and Tony Blinken coming out and saying that Bibi Netanyahu is an impediment to getting a deal done, which would put pressure on him in Israel, because we've seen that the biggest pressure on Netanyahu politically has come from the families of the hostages who want to prioritize their loved ones over the Netanyahu's political survival. And so they could be calling this out more. And the other thing they could be doing substantively is exerting some U.S. leverage, right? When Joe Biden called Netanyahu after the strike that killed World Central Kitchen workers and threatened to cut off some assistance if they didn't open up aid crossings, well, lo and behold, some aid crossings opened up temporarily. When Joe Biden restricted one.
I wasn't going to say anything, but Dabby, you are bringing it up there too. Like, she's kind of tweaking out. Anybody notice that? Hold on. We are at 4 minutes, 25 seconds in. Like, yeah, she is kind of tweaking out just a little bit. I don't know. Maybe it's me. But by the way, a lot of these anchors, they have to take that extra pep, a little extra booger sugar sometimes here and there. I'm not saying she's doing it, but it is kind of weird.
At the sort of Lucy with the football nature of all of this, like over and over again, the U.S. keeps kicking, and pardon the crudeness of this metaphor, but the U.S. keeps kicking and Lucy being Netanyahu keeps moving the football, right? I mean, I was struck by this passage in the New York Times. U.S. officials say they expect to complete what they termed a final proposal with Egyptian and Qatari negotiators on Wednesday or Thursday. But a senior American official acknowledged that previous plans had also been called final, but were then revised. I mean, how should the administration be talking about what is happening right now in terms of these negotiations?
I don't know. Maybe, Gabby, you're onto something. Maybe. But I was kind of noticing her behavior there too, just throwing it out there. Anyways.
Which would put pressure on him in Israel, because we've seen that the biggest pressure on Netanyahu politically has come from the families of the hostages who want to prioritize their loved ones over the Netanyahu's political survival. And so they could be calling this out more. And the other thing they could be doing substantively is exerting some U.S. leverage, right? When Joe Biden called Netanyahu after the strike that killed World Central Kitchen workers and threatened to cut off some assistance if they didn't open up aid crossings, well, lo and behold, some aid crossings opened up temporarily. When Joe Biden restricted just one weapons shipment back in the spring, they adjusted their plan for their invasion of Rafah. But that's about it. We have not seen the U.S. use the leverage that it has, overwhelming leverage, because we are the lifeline that supports not just the diplomatic shield around Israel, but also their capacity to continue this military operation. And so they continue to kind of do this approach where it's like, we're going to hug Bibi in public and, we'll criticize him in private. But that's gotten us, very little progress, if any at all, over the last 11 months.
I do have to ask, though, you make the point that the Israeli citizenry has so publicly disavowed Netanyahu in a very, big, resounding way.
When did they do that? Huh? Hey, I didn't get the memo of that. Yes, there's protests going on, but you think any of them are against the war? No.
And yet the Netanyahu opposition in parliament has not coalesced, right? It's a combination of centrist, left-wing, Arab parties, and yet there hasn't been the sort of convening of power that could actually threaten Netanyahu's stranglehold here. And I wonder what the sort of catalytic moment has to be for that.
Yeah, we should also add, Alex.
Something's wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm Dabby. I don't know. Now I'm looking into it. Is she tweaking out? Huh. Audience, hey, no such thing as a wrong answer. I'll get your thoughts. Hey, if anybody says, hey, Kit, you're overthinking it, fine. Whatever. Kind of odd, kind of moving around. Look, I mean, did she stay up all night? Who knows? Hey. We all have busy days.
It's some of his own senior military officials, right, from the Minister of Defense to some people in the IDF, they reportedly disagreed with him on some of the demands that he's introduced to these ceasefire talks. So it's people in the streets, it's hostages' families, and it's some people in his own security apparatus. But what Netanyahu is good at doing is playing coalition politics. His coalition is got a small minority in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and it relies on the support of far-right political parties. Those people essentially have a veto everything he does. So his play is clear. I need to hold the Israeli right to the far right together and keep my opposition divided. And that's kind of been his playbook for a long time in terms of ensuring his political survival. And because there are these differences, the one thing that seems to coalesce the opposition is the prioritization of the hostages. Not necessarily like a bigger play to pursue peace with the Palestinians. That has not translated enough into pressure inside of the Knesset because they just don't have the numbers relative to if he can hold the far right together. But the reason that's worrying, Alex, is that he's got to therefore do the bidding of his most extreme ministers in order to maintain power. And that's why we see the kind of war in Gaza that we see. Doing the bidding of the most extreme people in your parliament or Congress, I can't imagine.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well. I don't know if she's onto something, but the reason why I played that video is because while Shmuley is getting owned by Candace Owens on Piers Morgan's show, do you condemn hummus? Do you condemn it? Do you condemn it? All the while, people are dying. People are being exterminated, and it's not Lucy in the football. I mean, at this point, we are seeing a people and culture being destroyed. And everyone saw it. From the live streams from RBN to Due Dissidents to the Jimmy Dore Show, Hard Lens Media, we were all there covering the DNC convention, and not one serious Democratic lawmaker went out there. Not Biden, not Kamala. None of them. AOC, Bernie went to speak with the protesters. None of them stood in solidarity with the uncommitted voters because they all, again, allowed AIPAC to speak. We all know that AIPAC controls Congress. We all know that AIPAC has the babysitters. They have assigned babysitters to members of Congress. Handlers. This is why nothing's being done. But don't worry, folks. I got Sam Cedars' assurance that Kamala is 1% better. Ain't that a sight?